This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the one of the important example called this generic part 1. Now here inside this particular generic one, what we discuss here. Now if you see here, we come up with a generic type. Here we come up with this particular generic, and here we provided the type parameter. Now this type parameter, what exactly it is doing here? So this type parameter basically now it is doing the based on our requirement object change here. Okay, now how it is changing it? Now here you can see we first time we created the integer object, second time we created the boolean object, and third time we discuss about the double object here. So because of this particular like because of this particular type, now we are able to create a three objects. We are able to create a three objects. So this is the first parameter we identify. Main purpose of this particular generic here. So it is used to create the different type of object based on the data type here. Okay. So this is all about the important section we need to understand here. Now, another important section basically what you can identify. What you can identify basically here, you need to understand getting the point. So two parameter. Now how these two parameters are implemented? Now here you can see this is the name of the class name, two generic I created, and here I come up with the two parameter. And inside the two parameter, this A and V, these not the same values. You can take whatever you are interested here. Earlier we come up with a T, okay, and now we discuss about A and V. Basically, so in place of here, if you provide the T, type and value. Okay, so just for understanding, type and value we can provide, but those are not important things here. Now you can come up with another character value also. Now here, because of this, I created the a value here. So here is the separate character I created. Now another important section. This is the first parameter and this is the second parameter. Now I'm calling this constructor provide the this type 2 parameter. Now after this, what we will do, we come up with the one show type method to identify the what is exactly the data type we used here. What is the exact data type we used? So because of this, now we provided this particular section here. Now another one basically here, another one. Now this is I'm trying to load the current object like type parameter 1 and parameter 2. So this is the parameter 2 and parameter 1. Now here you can see I created the one constructor which is expecting integer comma string. Now I created the one more constructor which is expecting string comma integer. Okay, these are the two different type of the generic type of parameter we identified here. Now the first one basically here we identify the first parameter. Now this particular two generic it is identified with two parameter. So this is what we discussed in the previous example. Now today we'll try to identify the another important section called bounded types here. Another important section called bounded type. Now what exactly this particular bounded type is going to provide? Now if you observe carefully, basically, as of now, what we did here we come up with the type parameter. We are trying to replace it with any class type here. Okay, here it is not going to allow the primitive type, only the wrapper as well as customized data types are going to be allowed here. This is what we need to understand here. Now, after defining this particular type here, now basically what we will do, basically what we will do here, I am going to call like if you observe now what exactly this particular bounded type is going to use here. So to understand this particular bounded type, now I'm trying to create a one class here. Now this particular class, what exactly it will do here? Okay. Now here, bounded type is nothing but we are going to come up with one condition here. Inside the generic here, again we are going to provide the condition. So we'll see how this particular condition is going to provide here. Okay. Now for this, what we will do, now I want to identify the average here. Okay, now I want to average find out the average. So to find out the average, first we need to create the generic type. So this is T. Now we are going to create the generic type. Now after this, getting the point. After this, now what we will do basically here, here we need to understand the one of the important example. Now here I'm trying to come up with a type. So it is expecting array type here. Okay, it is expecting array type. Now we'll try to create a constructor. So I want to initialize this particular array type here. Now how we are going to initialize here? Using this particular constructor. Now inside this particular constructor, I'm trying to providing the parameter which is going to hold this particular array type here, and internally this local variable now I'm trying to initializing into the instance variable here. So this is what we need to understand. Now constructor I created. After this, here I'm trying to come up with average, the average method which is going to return the double data type. Okay, so this is the average method. Now I'm trying to find out the average of whatever the values we are going to provide under this particular array values. Array is nothing but more than one value we are going to have. For example, if we are having 5 values, in between 5 we need to identify the average value. Okay, so because of this, now basically what we will do, we'll try to define one method called average, and inside this particular average, we are going to get to multiple values. So that now I'm trying to write the loop concept here. Now I'm trying to write the loop concept. So using this particular loop here, we'll try to repeat one by one here. Okay, we'll try to repeat this particular loop here. So after this, I plus plus. Now after defining this, after defining this, now if you observe carefully what I'm trying to provide here, here one variable I'm going to define. On top of this particular loop, I want to find out the sum basically. From the sum only we can identify the average here. Now, so to get this particular sum, initially this is the value I'm trying to initializing. After this particular value, after this particular value, plus is equals to num of, okay, num of the first value, and on top of this I'm going to call the double value. So we are trying to find out the average value. Now the average I'm trying to return as a, now the average I'm trying to return as a this particular double value. Getting the point? Now if you see here, this method I'm not able to access here. Getting the point? This type of method now I'm not able to access here. So why I'm not able to access basically? Because this double value is coming from where? First, we need to understand this from where this particular double value is coming. To understand this particular double value, now we need to identify the one class here. We need to identify this particular class. So what is the name of the class? Basically, number. Okay, this number class now it is having, now here you can see int value, long value, float value, and double value. Now, what you understand here? Now we need to use this particular number class. Getting the point? Now we need to use this particular number class to come up with this particular double value method. Okay, to come up with this particular double value method here. So this is what we need to understand here. This is what we need to understand. Now, for example, this average class, and internally at runtime we are going to provide the type. Getting the point? For this particular average class, we are going to provide the runtime, the generic type behavior here. But how this particular compiler will understand which is coming from the like a number class or not. Only this double value, we are going to come up with all the number related class, because now if you go to this particular number, basically it is one of the abstract class. Okay, abstract class, these are the all the abstract method we are having. Now another important section, now if you see here, integer is there. Okay. Now if I open this integer, now internally you can see which class is extending, which class it is extending. Now it is extending from number class. Now what you understanding? This integer internally it is extending from this particular number class, and can you depend and it is trying to override the all the methods. What are the methods he is overriding here? Now if you come back to below, this is the toString get chars here. Now we'll see. So this is the parse into method. Now value of method we are having. Now where are these particular methods? So these are the constructor. Now if you see, by to value we are overriding, short value, into value, long value, float value, as well as double value. Okay, these are the methods we are getting. Now what you understanding here? Now if I want to get this particular double value, this double value basically it is going to be used only the number related classes. So whatever the classes which are going to extend from this particular number, those classes are going to get this particular double value method. Now how we are going to achieve? Using this particular bounded type, now we'll make a one condition here. So what is the condition we are going to get here? So condition basically here, now if we observe t which extends from the number. So now if you observe carefully, this is the t I'm trying to write here. Now this particular t which is going to extend from the number. Now basically this is the bounded type. Bounded type is nothing but it is a basically condition. It is a basically condition. Now what is the condition I'm making? The condition, whatever the type we are going to provide at runtime, the type should be extend from this particular number class. The type should be it's extend from this particular number class. Now here, now if I remove this, now here you can see whatever this particular double value we are calling, now this double value method is resolved. Okay. Earlier we got an error. Why we got an error? Because we could not provide the this type of condition. Now what you understand here, if I want to call this particular double value, now we need to extend from this particular number class. So this type of condition, we'll call it as a bounded type here. Okay. Now we identified here. So we'll get this particular number value. Get in the point. Now once we get this particular number value, finally what I'm doing is sum. From this particular sum, now I'm going to find out the average here. Now I'm going to find out this particular average. Like based on this particular length here, now I'm trying to find out the average here. So this is what we need to understand here. Now finally, I'm trying to create a main method. So once we create a main method, so inside this particular main method, we need to create a object here. What is an objective we need to create? Average here. Now, this average we cannot extend with a string here. Okay, we cannot come up with a string here because string internally it is not extending the number class. This is very important. Now, if you see this error, what is saying here? What is saying here? The type parameter. What is the type parameter we used here? So something like the above line number 3. Now you can see currently the type parameter java.lang.string it is not within the bound here. Getting the point. So whatever the string class we created, the string class it is not within this particular bound. It should extend this particular number class. Now where we provided this particular number class, here we provided this particular number class here. So this is what we need to understand here. Now string is not going to be supported. For example, if I'm going to provide double, now here you can see double I provided and this is the average, and using this particular class I'm trying to create a average. But what is the parameter is expecting? Type array. Now what is the type array we can provide? Basically it is a double type here. Now double, this is an ARR like array I'm trying to providing, and here 12.01, so 13.02 and 14.03 and 15.04. and 16.05. So these are the values I'm trying to providing. Now here I'm going to provide ARR here. Okay, so this is what we need to understand here. Now, okay. Now here, what we can specify basically, so we can specify this particular section of code here. Now in place of this particular double, we can go for the double. Now it will work here. Now you can see the wrapper class I'm trying to providing. Under this particular wrapper class, I come up with the one array type here. The same array type I'm trying to use, because here we are using the double. So we are expect the particular array values also, it is expecting the same type here. The array values also, it is expecting this particular same values. Now after this, average dot, so we are calling average method. Now finally, we'll try to print this particular average method to get the average of this particular all the values, whatever the values we provided. Now these are the basic values we provided. Now from this particular values, I'm trying to find out the average value. Now how I'm trying to find out the average value? First, I'm trying to find out the sum. Based on this particular sum, now I'm trying to return the average. Now here you can see this is the average value here. Okay, this is the average value. But finally, what we need to understand, what is the main advantage we are going to get with help of this particular bounded type. Basically, we are going to get this particular behavior. Getting the point? Whenever we are having, when we want to make a certain condition here, getting the point? When we want to make certain condition, now we can go for this particular bounded type here. Now what is the condition we are making? Basically, this is the one of the inherited condition we are making here. Now all the number classes are going to be allow. Now other than this particular number classes, if you are trying to use any character, so this character also, it is not going to be used here. Now you can see average. Now here character I'm using. Now you can see character also, it is not going to be used here. So why it is not going to be used? Basically, because here character, it is not going to be supported here. Now here you can read the error what is saying here. The type parameter, the java.lang.character we provided, it is not within the bound here. Okay, it is not within this particular bound here. Now what is saying here, whatever the condition, the bounded type condition we are providing, so the character is not within the bounded here, it is outside of this particular bounded. It should extend from this particular number class here. So this is what we need to understand here. Okay, this is what we need to understand here. Now only all the number related classes only it is going to be used here. Okay, any questions so regarding this particular bounded type here? Now here you can see, now if we want to go for this particular float here, float is also basically, it is internally extending from this particular average one. Internally it is extending from this particular, what is the class? Basically number. Okay, now if you see, if I'm trying to show you the float class, internally it is extending from this particular number. So because of this, now we can easily access this particular float here. Now what about the another classes? What about the another classes? Now you can see short I'm trying to use. Now short also basically internally it is extending from this particular number class. Now, internally if we want to understand the byte here, we want to understand the byte here. Now you can see byte also internally it is extending from this particular number class. Now what is the last class? Long here. Now this particular long also internally it is extending from this particular number. So these are all the classes which are going to be extended from this particular number. Now other than this particular classes, if you provide any class, now you'll get a compilation error. Now you'll get a compilation error. Even though we are trying to use the generic type, inside the generic type, again, what we are doing is we are trying to providing the one condition. So this is also important here. Sometimes sometimes whenever we are trying to providing this but this type of getting the point. Sometimes whenever we are trying to providing this type of generic type here, we need to come up with conditions here. Getting the point. We need to come up with a condition. So using this particular generic kind of bounded type, we can make the condition. Getting the point. We can make the condition and we can use the based on the certain classes only. Getting the point. Based on this particular certain classes only. This is what we need to understand here. Now, Now observe carefully how I'm going to use this particular another example. Now another example, this is also very important here. Let me remove this one. Okay, for another example, now what we will do, first I want to create a one common class like one of the abstract class. For example, something like auto bean here. Okay, this is the auto bean class I'm trying to create. Now this auto bean basically one of the abstract class. Now, what I'm doing is here I'm trying to providing public abstract. So these are the not person name method. Name it is not going to be written any value. Okay. Along with this public abstract void, these are the common fields here. These are the common methods. Now I'm trying to keep under this particular auto bin. Now if you see here, I'm trying to create a one person class. Now this person basically internally it is extending from this particular auto bin. Now whenever it is extending from this particular auto bin, now what we are doing is we need to implement these two methods. So why we need to implement these two methods? Now I want to find out the name of the person. Okay. Now I want to find out the name of the person. So how I'm trying to find out this particular name of the person here? Something like a name. Okay. So here this out name here. Okay. And another one address. Now here we'll come up with one constructor. So this dot address is equals to address. Okay, now I created constructor and methods here. After this, now what I'm doing here, okay, now after this is the auto bin and internally it is extended from this particular person. Now here one more class I'm trying to create a member class and internally it is extending from this particular auto bin and this particular class also now it is going to be implement these two section of code here. Okay, now these two classes. Now I will go for the same example. Whatever this particular generic type we used here. Okay, whatever this particular generic type with a bounded type here. So these two are important. The generic type parameter along with this particular bounded type here. Now here, what you need to understand here, generic PM. PM is nothing but person and member. Now here same type I'm trying to use and here I'm trying to extending with auto bean here. Now I'm trying to extending with this particular auto bean here. This is the bounded type condition here. So that only it is going to allow the particular person or member other than these two classes, we are not going to allow to create a object here. Now the generic one and generic two, basically what is saying basically here, this particular class, there is no restrictions here. Any type we can provide, any type we can provide, the first parameter. Now the second one, now if you see, this is the two parameters are expecting, these two parameters we can provide there without any conditions here. Okay, now the third one here, we are trying to use only one type here, but the type should be come up with one condition. This is the condition we are using. Now this is the object I'm trying to use here. Using this particular object, public generic PM and type obj. Okay, so after this, what we are doing is generic PM T obj, and this dot obj is equals to obj. After this, now what we can identify basically here, I will return the type here, get object here. Same method I'm going to call here. Now to return obj. So this is what we need to understand. Main method, and here generic PM. First one we can go for the person because person is allowed here. Generic PM. Now what is expecting here? Type here. What is the type we can provide? Person. So to create a person, now first what we can do? We need to create a person object here. Now, how many parameters are expecting here? Name of the person. So something like so generic person. Okay, this is the first parameter. Now second parameter is address. Just for understanding, I'm trying to write this. Now here, person we provided. Okay, now it is allowing here, because whatever the auto bin we provided the condition, now this condition is going to satisfy for this particular person class. Now using this, now what I'm doing here, get object dot, now I'm trying to call this particular name. Okay. Mm, okay, name it is not going to print, right? Okay, got it. And generic PM dot get obj dot address. Okay, this address and names are going to be printed here. Now you can see, whenever I'm trying to print this example here, whatever we provided, something like a get person, like a generic person and a generic address here, generic person and a generic address we are able to see. This is what we need to understand here. Okay, this is all about the important example on this particular bounded type here. Now if I want to go for the another condition which which it is going to be failed automatically. Now for this purpose, generic PM, now here basically I want to provide the average here. Okay, I want to provide the average. Now if you see what is saying this error, because we already familiar with this particular error here, the type parameter something like average, it is not within the bound here. So within the bound means, what is the bound we are expecting? Auto bin. It should be within this particular auto bin of this bounds here. Okay, so average class basically what we can identify, it is not extending from this particular auto bin. Now whenever it is not extending this class, we cannot use in the generic related behavior. Okay, directly you can create an object for that average class and we can use it, but inside this particular generic section we are not going to use. So this is also very important here. Now this type of conditions for this particular generics we may use in the real-time applications here. Okay, now try to practice on the generic one and generic two and this particular bounded type. So still any questions? Still any questions regarding this particular bounded type here? Okay. Now, if we don't have anything, now what we need to understand basically here, we need to understand the another important section. We need to understand the another important section, basically wildcard argument. So this is also very important concept here. Now, before going to discuss about the wildcard argument, now what is the drawbacks we are going to get whenever we are not using this particular, whenever we are not using this particular wildcard argument here. Now we'll see how this particular wildcard is going to be implemented here. So to understand this, now what we will do basically, whatever the class we defined here, we'll go for the same average class here. Okay, so this is the average class we discussed so far. Now inside this particular average class only, now what I'm doing here, now I'm trying to define the integer and do double here. So first to double I define. Now I'm trying to find out the average here. So no need to find any average. Now we'll go for the this is for integer ARR1. Okay, so 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 10. Yeah, these are the values are enough. This is the integer related. Now here I'm trying to providing integer. Now this is we already identified. Now I'm making average one and this is the ARR one. So two object we created, integer and double. So both are extending from this particular number class. Now this is we identified. Now after this here what I'm trying to do, here I'm trying to create a, these are the same average or different average. Okay, this is a method I'm trying to define. Basically this method, it is going to return the, this method it is going to return the boolean here. Just I'm trying to check it, this method now it is the same or not. So to check this, now what we need to provide here, getting the point. Now this is the same average or not, we are going to check. Now basically what I will do, this double related array I'm going to check and integer related array I'm going to check. Now both are returning the same average. Now we can easily understand it is a same here. Now here I'm going to write the method called average here. Now I need to compare with one more average. So how we can compare with the one more average? To compare this, what we can pass here? Object we need to pass. What is an object we need to pass basically? Get in mind, what is an object we can pass basically? This is the current class object. Get in the pen. This is the current class object we need to pass here. Now, if you observe here, what I'm doing here, average and which is expecting the type here. Okay, OB. Now, using this particular OB dot average method, I'm calling. So, carefully observe the method related also, the method parameter also. Now, we are trying to use the generic type here. So as of now, we are used only the class level and the constructor level. Now we are trying to use the method level also. How we are using? Directly the particular class we are providing along with the class. Now we come up with a type here. The generic type we are trying to use here. Okay, so this is important. Now you can see average method I'm calling, and using this particular object again I'm trying to call the average. If both objects are equal, okay, if both objects are equal, now I'm trying to use true. Otherwise, okay, otherwise, now I'm trying to use false here. Otherwise, now I'm trying to use this particular false section. So this is what we need to understand here. Okay, now we created this particular average related section of code. Now, what you need to understand here, whenever I'm trying to call this, okay, whenever I'm trying to call this, now if you observe here, come back to here. Now what I will do basically, I'm going to check this particular average here, like how we are going to call this particular average here. If average dot same average one I'm trying to pass here. Now, if you see here, we are getting an error here. Why we are getting an error? Because this average also double. Okay, this average now we provided the integer. Now, carefully observe here we come up with the type here. So based on the type, now what happening? Every time it will try to consider as a the first object we are calling it average. Every time it will consider as a double here. Even though you are trying to providing average one as an integer, it is not going to be considered as a integer. It will consider as a double. Now if you see the error, what is saying here? Required type is double, but we are trying to providing integer. But here, even though we are using this particular type here, so this is very important here. Now, whenever we are having this type of example, okay, now basically compiler in place of this particular t, now what is expecting? Double is expecting. Why the double is expecting? Because reference here, average. Average having what type here? Double type. So because of this particular average, we provide a double. This parameter also now it is expecting as a double. Now if I change here, for example, average one, and here I'm going to provide the average here. Now you can see this average. Now compiler is now treating as an integer, but we are trying to providing as a double. But we are trying to providing as a double. For example, if I'm going to provide average one, now you can see no error. Why we are not getting any error? Because average one also having the same generic type, and the parameter, the method parameter, whatever we are providing, so that is also same. Okay, that is also same. Because of this, now what happening internally? Because of this, what happening internally? So compiler now it is resolving issue. But the problem, we are not going to provide the same data type here. Like we are not going to provide the same reference here. Here also same reference, and here also same reference. So we should use the different here. Then only we'll get the same average or not here. Then only we'll get the same average or not here. But here we are getting an error here. So this is what we need to understand here. This is the main drawbacks we are going to get here. To resolve this particular drawback, now what we will do? To resolve this particular drawback, basically what we will do, in place of this particular t, now I'm going to provide the question mark here. In place of this particular t, now what I'm doing here, now I'm trying to providing the question mark. At runtime, we may provide the different to data type here. At runtime, so we'll also provide the different to data type here. Now you can see, now if this particular conditions is satisfied, it will try to return this particular true value. Otherwise, it will not return. Now you can see both are same. And here in the else section, now what we can do? Different here. Okay, but now carefully observe, the first one we identify the bounded type here. Second one we are trying to discuss about the method level parameter. This is the question mark. Basically we'll call it as a wildcard argument here. Okay, so when we can provide this particular wildcard argument here, even though we are trying to use the generic type, but method level, if we want to come up with a different type of parameter, now in that case, now we can provide this type of wildcard argument here. Okay, so this is what we need to understand here. This is what we need to understand. Now finally, I'm going to call the same average method. Now the same average method, what it will do? It is trying to return as a different here. Now why it is trying to return as a different here? Because this particular data type is different and this particular data type is different. Okay, so both are having different values. Because of this, the average also we are going to get to different here. The average also we are going to get different. So this is what we need to understand. Now mainly what is the concern? So this is the question mark. Now in which scenario we can go for this particular question mark here? Now, even though we are trying to use a generic type here, but inside the generic type, if we want to provide the different generic type for the method parameter, okay, in that case, we can use this particular wildcard argument. Now, so observe carefully how this particular wildcard argument is going to use. Now, another example I'm trying to use here. So another example. Now, finally, this particular example, it will give you the more understanding of this particular bounded type as well as this particular wildcard here. Okay. Now you can see this is the 2D class I'm trying to create. Inside this particular 2D, x comma y. Okay. Inside this particular 2D, we are having x comma y. Now 2D into a comma into b. Now here a is equals to x here, x is equals to a, and y is equals to b. Okay, so I'm doing outside of this particular constructor. Now this is what we need to understand, constructor. So only 2D class I created. Now I'm going for the 3D class. This is the 3D. Now internally, if we observe, is expecting 2D, and here into Z here. 3D, what we can do, into A comma, into B comma, into C. Okay, and super constructor I'm trying to call with A comma B, and here Z is equals to C. This is 3D class. Now here 4D class. So this particular 4D class internally extending from this particular 3D. Now finally into T I'm trying to providing. Into T now I'm trying to providing. Now here you can see, so this is the constructor. Into D, and here E is equals to D. So finally, how many classes we created? 3 classes we created. Now, using this particular 3 classes, basically what we will do, we'll try to work on this particular, the first bounded type here. Now, here you can see bounded type class I created, and T, it should extend from the which class. So you can make whatever the class you are interested. For example, if I'm going to provide 4D, okay, now here 2D is we can use, 3D we can use, and as well as 4D we can use. Now if you provide the 2D, only 2D we can use this, because 2D is a super class role is playing. Getting the point? Now because of this, I provided the 4D here. Okay, so we'll see. Now here I'm trying to use a type. This is something like array type here. Now number, uh, here this dot nums is equals to nums here. Okay, so this is the constructor we are calling. After calling this particular constructor, now this is very important, we need to understand. For example, if I'm going to provide only 2D, so what happens internally? I'm trying to create a static method, because we are not going to create a object here. But anyway, we need to create a object here, because we need to pass the values, right? So we can go for the non-static here, static void show x5 method. But here question, this is very important. Now what is a parameter? Now I am trying to print the all the values here, the xy related values. Okay, here I'm trying to print the x and y values. But this x and y values, how we are going to print basically? From which variable we are trying to print here? Now this is a variable. Now you can see into I is equals to 0 and I less than nums dot length and I plus plus. Here I'm trying to print here. Now this out I'm trying to print here. If you see, observe carefully what we can identify. Directly I'm trying to providing dot what I'm trying to get basically here. What I'm trying to get basically, I'm getting as a x here. Getting the point. But so using this same I dot y I'm trying to print. Okay, and we are not going to get x here. Okay, we are not going to get x here. So why we are not going to get x here? Sorry, x y z we are not going to get, because we are trying to print like we are trying to extend from this particular 2D class. We are trying to extend from this particular 2D class only x and y values we are going to print here. Now, for example, what happens if I'm trying to print this particular y values? For example, now if I'm trying to print this particular y values, what happens? So, not y, z values. Now, if you see nums of I dot z, now you are getting a compilation error. Now, in place of this particular 2D, if you make 3D, now you can see z also now we are not getting. Z also now we are not getting. So because of this particular bounded type, the parameters also now changing. Because of this particular bounded type, now parameters are changing here. Now I will go for this particular 2D. So now we identified here. Now I will remove this particular section of code. Only two are the values, two variables are going to be allowed here. But question here, I want to provide the object to this particular method. From that method only, like from that method parameter only, I want to call this particular nums here. Okay, from that method only, now I want to call this particular method. So now you can see, to provide the method parameter, now here bounded type, you cannot use this particular type here, something like BT. Okay, so this is the BT I'm using. Now here we are trying to use this particular BT. Now what I will do here, based on this particular BT nums, okay, based on this particular BT nums, I'm trying to check the length here. After the length, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to load the values. So you can see, so that these values are going to load from the current object. Whatever the current object we are going to pass to this particular method, from that method we are checking the condition. From that method only, now we are trying to load this particular variable related section. Now for example, if I'm trying to do here, like for example bt dot nums z. Now z also it is not allowing. Why it is not allowing? Because of this particular bounded type condition. But here now, so again we already identify the drawback here. We already identify the drawback. What is the drawback? Basically type we cannot use here. Why we cannot use? Because this particular show xy method we are going to call from the different object. When you are trying to call from the different object, this type it is not going to be used here. Only same type of object we need to call here. Same type of object we need to call here. Now because of this what we can do, getting the point, because of this now what we can do, so here we can provide the question mark here. We can provide the question mark. But the problem here, whenever we are providing the question mark, now here, this is basically what is expecting here. It is expecting how many parameters we want to load here. Okay, how many parameters we want to load. Like based on the bounded type we already identified, we can load only 2 parameters. So instead of making class level, getting the point, this is very important here. Instead of making the same behavior at a class level, okay, now what you need to understand here, instead of making with a bounded type at class level, now same concept I'm trying to use the method level also. Here you can see question mark extends 3D. Now, so that whenever I'm trying to providing 3D, here we can go for this particular another parameter also, like another variable also. Now you can see successfully we are able to use this particular Z value. Now what you understand, class level I'm trying to use this particular 2D, but method level I'm trying to use this particular 3D. And here wildcard argument we are using along with the bounded type. Along with the bounded type here. So this is all about the important section we need to understand here. Now here, now, so this is the first method like show xy. Because of this, now we can go for the, let me keep z also. One more method I will come up with here. So xy and it is expecting bounded type here. So bounded type, now we can provide the question mark. And this is also we can come up with the BT. Okay, now you can see this is the xy and xyz here. Now if you want to use another method, what is the another method? It will try to use the xyz and t also. Here we can go for the 4D. Okay, here we can go for the 4D. Now finally bt dot nums of I, nums of I dot, what is the value we are having? T. This is the three methods. But what we are doing basically, this is very important. First one, we are not using the bounded type, only wildcard we are using. The second one, along with the bounded type, we are using the wildcard. So the third one also, we are trying to use the same behavior, but extending class is different here. Okay, extending classes are different here. Now, this is what we need to understand. Now, finally, here, I'm trying to use a main method. Now, what exactly this particular main method will do? This main method internally, we are going to create a object. So, what is the object we need to create basically? Okay, what is the object we need to create basically? So, to create an object, what is expecting the type here? This is the type array. Now, what we are going to provide here? Now, whenever I'm trying to create an object for this particular bounded type, for example, if I'm going to providing 2D, okay, if I'm going to providing 2D, now bounded type, what is the constructor type here? Now you can see constructor, this is the constructor we are calling, but it is expecting the type of array values. It is expecting the type of array values. Now what is the type we are using? 2D we are using. Now we need to provide the 2D related values here. Getting the point? Now we need to provide the 2D related values. So how we can provide here? This is the 2D type. Now I'm trying to use array type here. Okay, if you are not interested, you can go for this particular variable level array type here. Now here, this is the 2D type here. Now internally 2D. Now what are the values it is expecting? Int a comma into b. So 10 comma 12. First object. 2D 20 comma 14. Only three objects I'm going to create. Okay, so 30 comma 16. These are the three objects I created. Now, using this particular bounded type, I provided the TD. Okay, so this is we provided. But observe carefully. Now I created this particular 2D. Now I provided this particular values. Now I'm going to call this particular all the methods. What are the methods so far we created? Like first one I'm going to call xy. First one I'm going to call xy. Now you can see what we can pass basically here. Okay, what is the values we can pass basically? The show xy method, it is expecting the parameter. Now we need to now we need to pass this particular value, sir. For example, as of now we are having only one method, like one object. That is the same object we can pass here. Okay, for this particular method, now this is not required here. Now if you provide the t also, it will work here. Now you can see, because here the type and whatever the parameter, like method parameter we are passing, both are same type here. So no need to come up with explicitly the wildcard argument here. Now if I'm trying to print this, now you can see what are the values we are getting here. 22, 34 and 46 here. Okay, how we are getting this particular 46 here? From where it is trying to print this particular 46 here? Now what you understanding basically? Basically this loop is repeated 3 times. Now internally all the values are calculated. All the values are calculated, but this is not the expected way. Getting the point? This is not the expected, but what we expected basically, it should be, it should print all the values here. But currently what is doing this? It is trying to do the addition here. It is trying to do the addition here. Now here you can see, so 10 and 12, 20 and 14, 30 and 16. So another important here, we can provide the comma. Another important section, we can provide the comma, so that it will provide the comma related. Now you can see 10 comma 12, 20 comma 14, 30 comma 16. So far whatever we provided, like 10 12, 20 14 and 30 16. But now if we observe bounded type dot show xyz, now here bounded type I'm trying to providing. Bounded type I'm trying to providing. Now carefully observe here why we are getting an error. Why we are getting an error? The line number 30. Any suggestion? So why this particular line number 30 we are getting an error? Okay, so carefully observe the show xyz method. What is expecting basically here? Here you can see that this is the show xyz method. It is expecting 3D. Okay, it is expecting the 3D, but what is the object we created? 2D type here. We created 2D type. This method, it is not going to be useful here. Now, in that case, what do we need? We need to create a one more object. We need to create a one more object, and here 3D object we can provide here. Now, let me remove this. Not required. 3D, and it will expect the parameter something like 10, 20, and 30. 3D 40, 50, and 60. TD, after this 70, 80 and 90. These are the three objects. Now here TD type I'm trying to providing and TD1 I'm trying to use it. So bounded type 1 here. Now if you make here bounded type 1, it is resolve the issue. Now if you go to this particular method, make the semicolon, like so not the semicolon, make the comma, so that it will try to come up with different values here. So easily we can differentiate all the values. Now you can see, okay, here I missed to add y, like a z related concept here, but below you can see 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 and 70, 80, 90. Now what you understand here, class level also we can use the same bounded type. Now method level also we can use here, method level also we can use, but question here, whenever we are using the method level, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to providing wildcard, because we may provide the different data type values. So this is very important section we discuss here. Now any questions or regarding this particular the bounded type as well as wildcard arguments here? Any questions? Okay, so far we identify the all the classes related stuff with a different type of generic type here. Now without creating a class, without a generic class, now I want to come up with a generic method here. Getting the point? This is important here. Without creating this particular generic class, now I want to use a generic method here. Now how we are going to use generic method? Because so this is we already identified with a different example class level. Now I will try to create a one example with a generic method. Okay, so this is the class name I'm using generic method, but on top of this particular class level, I'm not going to use any the concept called generic related. Now this is the method I'm trying to use, static method, and basically this method it will try to return the true or false value. This particular method basically it will try to return this particular true or false value. So if I want to return this particular true or false method, now initially what we will do, we'll provide the boolean. Okay, we'll provide this particular boolean here, but I don't want to provide the boolean as well. So the return type also should come up with a, the return type also should come up with a generic here. How we are going to provide the this type of behavior? How we are going to provide the this type of behavior? So this is what we need to understand here. Now if you observe carefully how I'm trying to creating this method. Okay, for example, this is a method. Now boolean is in method. Now you can see this is in method is expecting the two parameters. First parameter type here, second parameter value array. Okay, so now you can see we can go for the VS. So observe carefully. Now whenever I'm trying to use this particular T and V, because class level if you specify here, happily we can use for the method level. But I'm not providing class level. Directly I'm trying to use this particular method level. Now whenever I'm trying to use method level, how it is going to be used here? Okay, how it is going to be used? So this is very important, because if I'm not using directly method level, it is giving me an error here. Now you can see what is error is saying: create a class T, create a interface, create a enum, or create a inner class, and create a type parameter. So it is expecting these are the suggestions here. Okay, these are the suggestions are is providing, but this is not, we are not going to be created. The type should be generically we are going to provide the parameters here. Okay, for this particular type, now what I'm trying to providing here, if you observe carefully, this is the T. Okay, this is the T I'm trying to providing, and and this is the V I'm trying to providing. Now carefully observe. Here I'm trying to declaring. Here I'm trying to declaring t comma b. Now this method is not like it is not going to throw any compilation error. This method now it is not going to be throw any compilation error. So this is very important here. Directly we are using generic behavior for the method level without using class here. Now, so once we created this method, now what type of operations we are going to perform here? Because here we are trying to providing multiple values. Now using this particular multiple values, I am going to use a loop concept here. Now this is the loop I'm trying to use it into I is equals to 0, into I is equals to 0, and here I less than vs dot length here. Okay, vs dot length, and finally I plus plus. So based on this particular loop, now what I'm doing here, I'm checking the condition. So what is the condition I'm trying to check here? X dot equals x dot equals now vs of I. Okay, vs of I. If it is satisfied, now simply will return true. Okay, simply will return true. Otherwise, I will try to return the false here. So now observe carefully. This is one of the generic method I'm using. The generic method, now it is expecting the two parameters. First one is type and the second one is values. The values we are expecting as a array type here. Now using this particular type and values, now I'm checking the given type is existed or not. If it is existed, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false here. Okay. So this is we identified. Now what I will do, I'm going to create a main method. So because I need to call this particular generic method, how I'm going to call here? Now to call this particular generic method, what is expecting this particular value? Now it is expecting the array type. Now I'm trying to creating array type. Now I'm trying to creating this particular array type. So simple values I'm trying to providing. Okay, these are the array values I'm trying to providing. After this, now what I'm trying to provide here, I'm going to call this particular method. Okay, I'm going to call this particular method. So here I'm trying to check if is in method. Now what is the type? Type I want to provide something like a 40. Now what is the value? Now value I'm trying to providing ARR. If the value is existed, okay, if the value existed basically, now I'm trying to print value is available. Value is available. Otherwise, it is not going to be printed here. So if you want to know more about, now come up with a else statement. Value is not available here. Now, so carefully observe, I'm not creating an object. Why I'm not creating? Because it is a static behavior. So this particular method, it is having static behavior. Okay. Now because of this, I'm not creating any object here. Now here you can see whatever the given value, what is the value we provided? 40. The 40 now it is available under this particular array here. So here the first parameter is expecting X here. The first parameter now we provide as a value. The value now it will store as a X here. Now what about this particular VS? The VS we are trying to pass as a ARR, because this is, even though this particular value is a generic type, now it is expecting the array type of values. Now we created one array example. Now we pass to the method parameter. Now this is a method we are calling is in. Internally it is executed, it is returning. Now for example, if I'm trying to providing 400, okay, if I'm trying to providing 400, now we'll get as a value is not available. Now you can see value is not available. Okay, for example, in place of this particular 400, now I'm giving 400 as a string here. The 400 earlier we given as a number, but currently we are giving as a string here. Currently we are giving as a string here. So what happening basically? what happens basically, this particular value still it is not available we are getting, even though we are giving this particular different to data type here, different to data type. Now you can see I want to give as a character type. The type we can give any type here. There is no restrictions here. There is no restrictions here. Now we are checking here equals, because here also this equals method basically it will expect as object here. Now if you see the equals method, what is expecting object here, the parameter now it is expecting as a object here. Because of this particular object, now we are able to pass all the data type here. We are able to pass all the data type. Now what I am doing here, if you observe, I am trying to use a condition, the same bounded type condition. Okay, I don't want to allow all the data type here. Okay, what we can do, e extends number, getting the point. So if this particular t it is extending from this particular number, okay, if this particular t it should extend from the number, as well as whatever the v we are having, v internally it should extend from this particular t. Okay, so v it should extend from this particular number here. Okay, remove this one, not needed. Now if you see, carefully observe, whatever the type we provided, the type internally it should extend only number, and if the type is extending number, the same type related condition, now I'm making into this particular v internally it is extending from this particular t. So this is very important here. Here what we are doing here, we are trying to use the bounded type here. Here we are trying to use bounded type, even though we come up with a generic method. Okay, so whenever we are making this character is not going to be allowed. Now for example, what about this particular string? Now you can see string also it is not going to be allowed. Why it is not going to allow? Because condition we added here. Now you can see what is saying, provided string is expecting value array integer array. Okay, but we provided string here. So because of this, now it will not satisfy. Now provide the 40. So it will work successfully. Value is available. Now for example, 40.12. 40.12. This is also, this is the double also internally extending from the number. But now it will not satisfy. It is returning as a message call value it is not available. But still we are having an option to allow this particular double related class because of this particular the bounded type, whatever the condition we added. So still any questions so regarding this particular generic method? Okay, so I'm stopping the session up to here. Tomorrow we'll discuss about the generic constructor, and after this we'll discuss about the generic interfaces. So far we identified only class related. Now tomorrow we'll discuss about the interfaces concept. Once these interfaces concepts are completed, we'll identify the what are the predefined classes we are having here. Now we'll identify, after this we'll discuss about the inheritance mechanism based on this particular generic type here. So these are the generic related example we are having. Now this is mostly we'll try to discuss in the tomorrow session. We'll complete this particular all the generic related behaviors here. Okay, so still any questions so regarding our today's session, if anyone having any question?